So let me introduce myself. So my name is Ben, and I run Data Literacy, LLC, and I have a background in engineering and business. I spent a lot of time at Tableau, and I wrote a couple books that you can go find online, and I blog also. And I love hiking and backpacking in the Pacific Northwest, here where I live. There's a picture of me and my wife, Becky, and our 3 kids, Jack, Aaron, and Simon. And that's our little dog, Winston, right there. Pretty awesome that he is off the leash, but still sitting there. I always like to point out that that's kind of a big moment for us as a family, that he didn't go take off, which would have been a little inconvenient with us with those big packs on, as I'm sure you can imagine. But he's getting better and better as he gets older. All right, so if you could do me a favor, I'd like to know a little bit about you. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, open up the chat and just tell me your name, the city you live in, and then I gave you hiking and backpacking. So go ahead and give me a hobby that you have and put that into the chat, and I'll read some of those so that you all can see. And it looks like you can see them too, since you can notice when you present, you can change, when you hit the chat all panelists and attendees in the to box, and that'll allow everyone to see. And then everybody can get an idea about who's here. So welcome Alberto from Vancouver, he's into cycling, and Jonas from Copenhagen, plays footy or Australian football. Steve Wexler is here from New York, and his hobby is trolling colleagues. I think I'm one of them at the moment. I'd like to welcome Joey as well, and Steve from Denver. And yeah, chasing your 3 sons has never been a more active hobby, I'm sure, at the moment, with the kids out of school in many places. Welcome Daniel, placed near Frankfurt. I've been to Frankfurt one time, actually. Tableau has an office there. I got a chance to visit there. I went to Goethe's house, too. That was neat. You like photography and videography, and also a dog lover. That's great. Grandchildren and barbecuing. I love it. Okay. And I'd like to welcome Susan Blake and Aman from India. And then Zach Gamignani as well from Nashville. Looks like everyone's into kid wrangling these days. Let's see, Boglarka from Hemel Hempstead and into Tableau visiting too. Yeah, that's a favorite pastime of mine as well. Devin in New Jersey, reading and travel. And so this is a great way to interact with people, kind of get to know who's there. I've done round introductions and where everybody turns on their microphone and introduces themselves. I love that, but the problem is once you get more than around, I would say 8 to 10 people, it starts to take up a big chunk of the time. And so, you don't want to burn through 10 or 15 minutes just doing introductions for like an hour session. That's just not going to work. So this way of actually just putting in the chat and you get to see who's there, and everybody does. Also like to welcome Montana Von Fliss, also from out here in Seattle where I am. And I'd like to thank Montana for giving me some early speaking advice in my time after leaving Tableau. So welcome, Montana. Nice to see you on the webinar as well. And also that means someone's counting my ums and ahs, right? So I love it. Okay, cool. So I want you to, let's start with the very first kind of interactivity that I'll play around with. And again, I really like to, when I'm having people interact with data, it's one thing to just talk about it and then, maybe they're turning their microphone on and giving an answer. But then with a group this big, there's going to be 1 or 2 people, as you know, that'll probably try to dominate the conversation a little bit. So what you can do is if you have a question for the group, okay, you can have them use the annotation function. So notice if you click on your Zoom panel that you'll see a little button called Annotate. Do you all see that or no? Because I know that as a panelist I do, and I know in meetings I can. So hopefully,
I'm not seeing it.
In fact, in webinar, you might not be able to. So I'll show you how that works. And what you do is essentially as a meeting participant, they can hover over their little Zoom panel and click on this button right here called Annotate. And so I'll do that, okay? So then what that would allow them to do is they'll pick a different drawing function. Let's say maybe I'm gonna put a stamp, I'll be a star, okay? That's gonna be my shape. And so let's say I wanna go in here and say, what kind of chart am I, right? So I'm going to actually, it's a little tricky when you're actually presenting because anytime you click after you turn on this function, instead of doing what you think it might do, it'll actually just draw the shape, right? So if I come over to this slide and I say, I'd like to indicate what kind of personality I am. So imagine you have a meeting with a few dozen people and you're training them and just want to kind of have a lighthearted icebreaker. and I ask them what type of chart reflects their personality. So when you're in a meeting like I am, I can actually just go in here and just go in and pick a stamp. So I'll pick, like I said, a little star, and I'll say I'm a scatter plot because or a bubble chart, right? So I'm kind of all over the map. There we go. I'll put a little star right there. Or you can have, they can pick their own shape. So this little fun, a little heart in there, or maybe a checkbox. So this is a great way for people to, and you'll see some people putting votes over here. Maybe some see themselves as a column chart. Others see themselves, they are really travel buffs, so they'll call themselves a symbol map. And so what's nice about this is that the group starts to interact with the slide live in front of everyone. Everyone can see. But what's also interesting about this, if you think about it, is that, you know, it's anonymous in the sense that I don't know who put a check where. And actually that's kind of nice for participants in a way. You may think, oh, well, you know, that's, you can't even tell who put the check there. But it's nice because it's a really sort of less than intimidating way of getting them to interact with the content, getting them to think about what they would do. It's really great for data visualization too. Let me show you what I mean. Like I can take, for example, a fun topic like, let's say, let me just clear this out here and turn off annotation so I can move the slide ahead. But let's say I want to talk about rats in New York City, since health is such a big concern for us all, isn't it? So why would I be doing that to you all? Well, I'm going to do that anyway. Sorry. It's a cute rat, right? I mean, you have to admit, I mean, at least it's not a scary looking rat. But let's say I set the stage like this. I say to you, I want you to put a little check mark or a heart or a star, whichever you like. You pick your own symbol. And this is what I would be saying to my trainees. I'll say, you go ahead and put a mark at the very first place that your eye goes when you see the following chart. So think of it like a primitive eye tracking study, okay? So and it's not scientific, it's just kind of illustrative, right? So I want the trainees to be able to tell me and each other what they see or what they notice first when they see a chart. I want them also to be able to see what the other trainees see as well, okay? So let's say I go here. This is talking about rat sightings in New York City, and I want to know what their eyes are drawn to. And so they might come in here and say, some might say, well, you know, I would say that the first place I see is this big spike right here. And so you say, okay, interesting. So, you know, you're noticing that there's a big outlier in the data. And so that strikes up an entire conversation. And it's better than me saying something generic like, hey, don't your eyes immediately fixate on that spike? I mean, they may say, yeah, okay, I agree. But this is a way for them to make that point for you, which can be a lot more powerful than, you know, me going in and saying it to them. You might say, some say, well, you know what, actually, no, I didn't really go there first. The first place I looked was up here by the headline. I read that word before I even looked at the chart. Oh, okay, interesting. So, you know, we can talk about that. So some people might see the headline first. Others might see the spike or the outlier. Interesting, different people see different things. Well, there's a whole conversation there. And that's more valuable than you just kind of making the point. I think you get it, right? So that's a neat way. Also, what I like to create with this annotation feature that works pretty well is another kind of a four blocker where I'm giving them four choices. This reminds me, when I was a little kid, I used to watch Sesame Street. Do you remember watching Sesame Street? And such a great program. I kind of worry about our generation. They watch like SpongeBob, but I don't know what else. Sesame Street, it was great. You learn all these little lessons and people treat each other good. God, we need a lot of that right now, don't we? But anyway, in this little 4-box grid, if you remember, here's what it's like. You got 3 kids bouncing a ball, okay? And 1 kid in the 4th quadrant is kind of throwing a ball up and down. And, you know, the whole point of the little vignette is, you know, one of them is doing something different. Can you notice which one it is? And it's great for little kids. So we like that. And, you know, we're not so different now that we're adults. So, so here's what maybe that could look like teaching data visualization. Let's say I want to talk to someone about seasonality, and I want to give them that understanding of what it means for a data set to be seasonal. In other words, there are patterns in the data that are predictable based on the time of year, okay? Seasonality, whether that's winter, spring, summer, or fall. Other kinds of seasonality doesn't necessarily have to be the 4 seasons or a 12-month cycle, but that's the traditional one. And so let's say I introduce, you know, that concept, and I could have some fun and have them pick which check boxes associated with the winter. Not really what I mean here, but if I go back to that rat sighting data, okay, maybe I'll say to them, Well, then interesting, you know, if I look at that rat sighting data in New York in 4 different ways based on the aggregation level of the data, whether I group it at a year or a month or a week or a day, I see different things. And so I might show them this, and I might say, can you let me know which of these do you think does a pretty poor job of illustrating the fact that rat sighting data is seasonal? It's higher in the summer specifically than it is in the winter. And so I would hope, if my trainees have been paying attention and they're not falling asleep on me, right? That's the other thing about it, is it keeps them on their toes, doesn't it? But they might say, well, I'm going to put some votes over here. Maybe someone else does this. And then lo and behold, you're going to say, oh, someone's going to kind of maybe have a different opinion. And you're going to say, oh, interesting. You know, someone said that they think that they don't see the seasonal trend very well at the day level of date aggregation. So, you know, that's okay though, right? It's a way to say, let's talk about that, right? So no one, for example, guessed by month or by week. So in other words, the group is pretty unanimous that that's a very clear way to show something seasonal, okay? And then we can maybe also agree that, you know, the day adds a lot of noise when we go into that level of granularity. And true, maybe that is a little more tricky. So let's talk about that, right? But then we can also kind of come back to, you know, the fact that, well, you know, we really don't see any seasonality at all at the year level because there's just no data below the annual level. So in any case, again, you know, this is a way for them to interact with the data. It kind of, like I said, goes back to that Sesame Street 4 blocker, which of these does not go along with the other. And so you can do all sorts of different things, getting them interact with chart types, getting them to talk about axes and what they mean, having them find an element. Maybe you want to see if they can identify a certain element or something like that. You can even make them use these little charts to create a chart, can't you? If you think about it, let's say I want to teach them the concept of a scatter plot. Well, I can draw my axes and I can say, put the dot where, you know, 10 and 20, maybe the coordinates meet. And so you can kind of introduce that Cartesian coordinate plane that way. So they're actually creating data visualizations using these fun little annotations. So I like it. You know, they can write on it too. You know, you can actually have them put text in here. Maybe they can put their name in here. Ben votes for this one. If you wanted to get more specific, they can actually write on your chart. Okay, and typing in answers to things, creating interesting, like, you know, versions of slides that have all sorts of different things in there. So I'll clear these out now. So I got to say, I have to credit Lori Horvath, who is an instructional designer that I've had the benefit of working with over the past few months out of North Carolina. And Lori, I don't know if she's on the call here, but Lori was really kind of pushing me to do this after a pilot I did with her organization, asking me to see if I can incorporate this into my sessions. And, you know, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that Zoom had annotations. I just never paid attention. I mean, I guess I could look and see that they're there, but never bothered to play with it, right? So I'm glad she did that. And I will tell you, I use these a lot now. I really do. I think it's so much more interesting, keeps people on their toes. They get that fun experience of getting a vote right, or maybe that challenging experience of trying to come to terms with why their vote was wrong. You know, those are all great learning opportunities. And also they're part of the process now, as opposed to just being observers. Okay, moving along, I want to talk about more ways to get people to interact with data. So within Zoom, as you know, we'll do a few different kinds of polls, right? So the first one is within Zoom itself. And by the way, does anyone have any questions before we move on about the annotation function, or it's anything about it? Seems pretty clear, right? And yeah, apologies that in the webinar that you weren't able to actually try it out. But when you have a meeting going on in Zoom, you can do that. I think you can probably do the same thing with Google Hangouts. Does anyone know, Steve, I know you mentioned that you had a question about Google Hangouts. So do you know if you can do a similar kind of a thing using Google Hangouts? I've never tried it in that app.
I've actually just been Googling that while you've been talking the last couple minutes.
It's a really useful sort of a function to be able to have. Okay, let's move on. So we're talking about polls. So one thing you can do directly within Zoom itself is to kick off a poll. So how do I do that? Well, I come down here into my webinar, and you can do this in meetings as well, right? So if you go into your meetings, you can see which meetings you've got there. And I'm gonna go into my webinar here. This is the one we're in right now. And I can go down to the bottom, and you'll see that there's a section right here called polls. So I can click on polls, okay? And I can see that I've got one question in here in a poll. Noted. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, no annotations in Google Hangouts, and or maybe Steve's not aware of it. Neither am I. Okay, so if we're here in a poll, I can go ahead and you can see I can go in here, I can make a new one, I can add a brand new poll. Polls can have multiple questions in them. What you do is you edit them and you just add your questions in here. So like, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead, let me just make sure. Yep. So you should be able to actually interact with this one yourself instead of me just telling you about it. So speaking about seasonality, like we've been talking about, I live here in Seattle and we call it Crane City, usually when we're not calling it ground zero for the United States COVID-19 pandemic. But in any case, on a normal day, you would see a lot of construction around the city of Seattle and cranes literally everywhere. And so I can say that, hey, you know, maybe I want to introduce that concept of seasonality, but I also want to talk about how it's a little challenging in some respects to visualize it. So maybe I'll say to my trainees, it's really easy to see the seasonality of building application permits. These are people submitting applications to the Department of Construction of the city of Seattle. And you can see people submit those permits all year round, going back for over 10 years now. And also I can show how there's some seasonality there. Okay. And then I can say that, well, if I break out this seasonality by application type, maybe I've got different kinds of permits. There's single family duplex, like here, maybe I want to put in a porch or a fence or a new bedroom. And there's also other kinds of permits, like, you know, commercial, maybe I'm putting in a new kitchen in a restaurant, or institutional, like maybe I'm putting together a new wing in a hospital. Industrial, like maybe I'm, you know, creating some kind of a factory. Lots of different kinds of permits that people apply for permits to be able to do construction on, right? And let's say I wanted to ask you, which categories do you think exhibit seasonality? And so I'm going to go ahead and kick off that poll. So I'll launch it, and I'm going to allow, yeah, show you, hopefully you can see, can you see a little poll pop up, I'm hoping, within on your screen right there. And you can vote. I can, okay, great. I can see some people voting. Awesome. So I'll just leave this over here for a second. Let you all kind of vote, right? So you can see on my screen there the area chart where I'm stacking up the bands of the different permit quantities there. And just, you know, kind of saying, hey, which of the following categories of permits would you say exhibit seasonality as we define it already? So everybody can go ahead and do that. I've got, all right, almost everybody's voted. In fact, I've had 15, so 78% of the people have voted, and it's been about a minute. So I'll, you know, let you know that we're going to wrap it up here in just another, maybe another 10 seconds. Okay, cool. Yeah, so question coming through here, do you create the polls in advance or can you create them on the fly? I create these ones in advance because it is a little time consuming to create it on the fly. You literally have to go in and edit your webinar. Also, while you're creating it, maybe it might, sometimes that might make some polls a little tricky. It depends though, you certainly can. You just need to go in and create it. I don't think I can actually create a new one here. I'll end the poll here, by the way. And I think then what I can do is I can share the results with you. So now can everybody see the results there? You can now see my screen, which was showing me the counts come in. So yeah, answer to the question, Montana. I almost always create the polls ahead of time. You could create them on the fly, but I almost find like that would be in response to some kind of a conversation that came up, popped up, that kind of a thing. So I would maybe just probably handle that as a discussion point as opposed to launching a poll. But maybe we said, oh, well, hey, you know, the group really wants to know, let's do the poll. And we could do that. But as you can see here, we've got most of the people saying that all of the above, all categories exhibit seasonality. Some saying next most popular category being I can't tell and single family duplex. So this is great because this is, again, every time I've done this poll, so don't feel bad, group. This one is always all of the above is always the most popular answer. I've done this poll about 7 or 8 times now. Every single presentation I've ever done where I've included this poll, that has been the most popular answer. But it's actually the wrong answer because you can see that if we flip around the order of the area charts, right, instead of having blue on the bottom, let's put blue on top. And then you notice if we do that, the other categories really don't seem to exhibit seasonality. They're more just noisy, at least if we look at them all together in aggregate. And oftentimes then we can switch to a line chart to be able to show each one maybe and talk about the differences. Also, you know, what's helpful about this is that it shows them how easy it is to fall into a pitfall with visual analytics, because it did seem to me too, the first time I saw it, that all of these applications were kind of all going up and down together like a roller coaster ride. And that is what's happening, except they're stacked and they're not behind each other. And some people sometimes when they see an area chart, they think of it like a mountainscape, like there's mountains behind mountains. And so, for example, the orange one goes all the way to the top and actually goes way behind the blue one to the bottom, but it doesn't. Not the way that kind of a chart is constructed. It's actually sitting on top of the blue wave. And so it's going up or down by virtue of the fact that the blue one is, right? It's sort of on the roller coaster of the blue track, so to speak. And so again, you know, not to belabor that point, but I do think polls that I integrate directly into Zoom can be helpful to go beyond just the check marks and such, where I'm actually like not formally, but I'm more rigorously collecting data in a, you know, or votes or guesses, if you will, kind of in that fashion. Okay, cool. So that's polls within Zoom. Again, I almost always set them up ahead of time, and they're good because they allow people to just check their knowledge. They're able to maybe, you know, sometimes if you're like me, you can be really mean and make tricky questions that people often get wrong. But again, my point there is to illustrate that yeah, sometimes these visualizations can be a little tricky to interpret. And I've seen a lot of times where, you know, I've noticed I got it wrong. Okay, thoughts or questions about Zoom polls at all, or how we can use those with visualizations or with data in general? And again, you don't have to just do it with chart types. It could be with anything there. Give you all a second just to, we're going to show a couple other kinds of little polls here. And these are going to require you to use your phone. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and get your phone out, okay? Get your phone out. And I need you to go to Sli.do, Sli.do, Sli.do. Okay, we're going to do Sli.do. There we go. And let's kick off a little poll here in Sli.do. So what I want you to do is enter a code in here. And let me show you Sli.do actually. Here's my admin panel for my event that I've created here, the Tech Tools webinar, okay? And so I'd like you to interact with this poll that I've created using your phone. This is really handy for big rooms of people. So let's say I'm presenting a keynote and I want to throw out a question to the room, and you know, they all got their phones in their pockets, they can pull that out. Maybe they don't have a computer. They can use it with a computer too. They can just go to Sli.do on their computer, which you can do right now if you don't happen to have your phone. But if you're like me and you get your phone, you can do that. And you can go to enter the code TTWDL. That's Tech Tools Webinar Data Literacy. TTWDL. You can see it right here at the top, this hashtag TTWDL. Okay, so go ahead and put that in your phone like this. Can you all see that? TTWDL, there you go. I don't know if you see it backwards, but I can do that and I can hit the arrow to launch it. Okay, and then you're going to be into the room here where I can launch this poll. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and if I click on the play, now here's how this works is you can see if I wanted to, I could use this for Q&A. So right where you are right now, if you did what I just did, Sli.do, plugged in TTWDL, you could use this to type in a question. So, you know, feel free to ask the speaker a question. You could do that if you wanted. I really wouldn't do that if I'm using a Zoom meeting, just because now there's kind of confusion around whether I should be checking the Zoom chat or Zoom Q&A, or now also the Sli.do one. So, you know, I almost never use the Q&A, but just to know it's there and it's useful and it's helpful. What I often do is I'll actually launch these polls. So if I hit the play button right here where it says activate poll, notice what happens on your phone when I do that, okay? And so what we're seeing here is I'm asking you a question, right? What of the following charts, let's see if I can pull up the examples here. Okay, so take a look at these questions right here. Okay, so the question is, I just got my citizenship actually a few months ago. So one time I was looking into naturalization data. And so I was just curious where people came from. I'm from Canada. That's where I was born. I've lived here most of my life, but I finally got my US citizenship back in October. I was pretty excited about that. So I got some data, I was checking it out. And then I was taking a look at it and I would say, hey, let me ask you a question. Which of the 4 charts below best answers the question, between Europe, South America, and Africa, which of those 3 regions produced the most naturalized citizens in 2017? Okay, so of those 3 regions, Europe, South America, and Africa, which of the 4 charts there tells you which one gave the US the most naturalized citizens in 2017? And you should be able to vote on your phone which one you think it is, the bar chart, the pie chart, the packed bubble, or the tree map. And so I'll give you a chance to take a look and to think about that. Some people knew before I show the choices. All right, so I'm waiting for let me see. Oh, I can actually probably go over here and see the poll. Yeah, oh, cool. The live poll, I can see that 11 people votes coming in right now. That's great. Very cool. Let me see if I can go in here. Oh yeah, because I'm just logged in also on my phone as an attendee like you all. So I won't skew the results because I know the right answer since I wrote the question. So that's not quite fair, but at least I can see how many people have done it. And then what I can do here is, again, this is great for when there's large rooms of people where they maybe don't have their computers. And so you can see that almost everybody is going for, I'll stop the polling there. So let's take a look at that. And we can see in the analytics, I think here, questions, poll votes. I can actually go in here and see what the answers were, right? So let's see if I click on here, I can see the results. You want to see the results? Yeah, I want to show the results. Oh, that's right. I can show you, I can like see whether or not it was visible for you all. And so I can see that everybody gets bar chart there. So yeah, probably a pretty safe one. All right, so the next one I'll ask, and I'll kick off the next polling question here within Sli.do, is it's kind of related. Okay, let's go down to this question right here, which is same thing, naturalization data. Let's say I have 4 different ways of visualizing. This is the data about, again, people getting naturalized in the US. And let me ask you which of the 4 best answers the question, or best highlights the fact that in 2017, that if I added up Mexico, India, and China together, people that became US citizens, that it accounts for just over 1/4 of the people that are naturalized in the US. So let me just go ahead and over here, I'll kick off the poll, and I'll come back to the slide here. And you all can kind of let me know which one you think is the best, to make the point that it's just over 25% of the people that got citizenship came from one of those 3 countries. Okay, so I'll give you a second there. I can see votes coming in right now. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for participating. That's what this is all about. And I'm curious to see what the answers are on this one. I'm just going to give another minute. I can see votes coming in. That's great. Okay, cool. Let's take a look. So hopefully you're able to give it a shot. Let's see what we got here. And so it looks like most people are saying pie chart. And so now we have a discussion point for the group. Okay, most said pie, some said stack bar, 25%. So let's talk about the difference there, and that can kick off the whole conversation there, right? Okay, great. So you get the point, right? So this is a great way to interact with audiences. Mostly, I think for me, with a simple poll like this, oftentimes I would default to doing this when I'm in a big room of people, which isn't going to happen for a little while. We'll get there. But I can use it for virtual too. You can use it for virtual. And again, you can kind of like show the data just like before. And you can kind of take the data and take a look at it later. Okay, so only a few more minutes. So I want to talk about a different way to do this kind of a poll. Now, the difficulty is now it goes straight to the visualization, right? But so many times when I'm teaching someone, so a group of people about data, I want to be able to have them work with the data itself. I want them to be able to interact with the data. Maybe they're going to put it into a tool like Excel or Tableau or Flourish or something like that. In other words, I want them to have the raw data. So let me show you an example of what I would do in that scenario. I like to use Google Forms for that. Really simple. You know, you can go in my Drive and just go new and go more and go make a Google form out of it. So that's what I did here. Okay. So I got a little form here. And then when I'm done, I can send it. So I'm going to put this in the chat for you all. I'm just going to go ahead and get this little link right here. I'll shorten it, although I don't really need to. I'll copy it. I'm going to put this into the Zoom chat, make sure everyone can see it. I don't know how many times I've typed in here just like one person when I thought I typed the whole group. You know, anyone who's led a session knows what I mean. So I'm going to put that in there. Okay. So please click on that. And it's a simple little question. I just want you to choose a random number between 1 and 20. It's really just not anything more complicated than that. Okay. And I'm not going to show the responses just quite yet on the screen, but I'd like you to vote because this is actually kind of a fun little quiz to do that someone can try out. And you can see I've got a little like validation step in here that says you get an oops message if you do something that's not between 1 and 20, but go ahead and give me your vote, okay, between 1 and 20. And I should, oh, I see responses. Thank God, that was going to be a terrible way to end the webinar. So as you see, I had to go into the settings. Oh my gosh, and make sure I didn't request sign in. You get it. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, now what you can see is I can see I can see my guesses in here, which is fine. But also then what I can do is click on this little icon right here, okay? And that opens up a spreadsheet right here, which I like. Okay, so I can see now people, and I can see people putting in their answers, which is awesome. But I can also then share this, and hopefully I do this part of it right. Yeah, okay, good. I can copy that, and I can put this in here, and I can say, okay, let's interact with this data. So now you're getting this spreadsheet, and you're putting this into your tool, whether that's Tableau or whatever it might be. I can see people jumping into the sheet right here. Also, it's a really great thing to, every time, one gotcha to watch out for with this, okay, is that every single time I've done this, the first few times this got me. Notice what you get is a timestamp, okay? But notice that because of the fact that we did it all together, you almost always see a couple people that submit at the exact same time. Like here, 2 people submitted at exactly 1:44 and 42 seconds on the dot, okay? And those people happen to randomly both choose 2, which is kind of funny. But anyway, be that as it may, you can't use timestamp as a unique ID. And so I've often found that that's a problem. So sometimes you want to have them put in their name, first name, last name, something else where if they add that in there into the form, it will be unique. You don't always need that. It kind of depends on what kind of analysis you're doing. So that's something to watch out for. The only thing I would say, and it's so funny, every time I do this, even with a relatively small group right here, does everybody know this about 17? Has anybody heard that 17 is like, when you do this exact exercise between 1 to 20, again, I've been doing this for years now, this exact question, and 17 is like way higher on the frequency list. And so actually there's a great article about it called 17 is the most random number, I think. Let me see if I can find it, and then I'll let you all go. 17 is the most random number. So you can click on it in this blog from a long time ago, but they've been doing some research, totally as a kind of quirky little aside, that people tend to pick 17 if you give them the question, choose between 1 and 20. And so anyway, it's kind of fun to read this little article and see why people think that is, but it always pops up, which I kind of love because I was born the 17th of the month of September. So, it's my favorite number. So hey, there we go. Last but not least, I know we're a little bit over time, but I love this tool called Kahoot. It's a lot of fun, and so you can use this one too. So what I want you all to do, let's just try it if anybody wants to play around with it, okay? Go to the browser, again, go to your phone, and go to kahoot.it, kahoot.it. Okay, just like that, kahoot.it, hit enter. And you can do this on your browser too, like I can go kahoot.it, okay? Now, when you get there, it's just going to ask you to put in a game pin, just like with Sli.do, same thing, right? So again, this is great for people in an audience, in a big room, or this is great for people right here online. And so, unfortunately, you're seeing some of this right now. So let me get out of here. So I'm just going to say done. So what we can do here is actually create a fun little contest, so to speak. So it's more than a poll. It's almost more like you're kind of playing like a game with each other a little bit. So I can go here into this Tech Tools webinar, right? And I can say, hey, I want to share this one. So let's go ahead and play it. Okay, so I'll hit play. And I'll just host it live. You can do a challenge, by the way, which allows people to do it on their own time. Maybe they're not starting at the exact same time. That's fine. But in this moment, I got us all right here in the room, so I'm going to host it live. So what I want you to do, okay, is go to your phone and go to kahoot.it, and I'm going to kick it off, okay? And I'm going to turn off the phone here because it's a little loud. There we go. So just put in that number you see right there, 3688150, okay? Punch in that number into Kahoot. I'll do it too. 3688150. Okay. This is a way to kind of make it fun. You're kind of gamifying their knowledge a little bit, right? Then it says put your nickname in there. So you put your name in there, whatever it is, and you start to see your name pop up here. Awesome. I can see people doing it. You can see your name on the screen there. That's awesome. I'll put mine in there. Data remixed. Okay, go. There I am. Boom. All right. So hopefully you all put your name in there. Cool. We got a bunch of people in here. That's great. So now I'm going to hit start. Okay. And then it's going to ask a question, and you have to vote using your phone. So everybody's in. You should see your name on there. I'm hit start. And I'm going to say, are you ready? Okay, here we go. You can see your phone. It's going to let you vote. First question, what data pioneer created the following data visualization? Okay, and then it shows the visualization right there. You get to vote. The faster you vote, the more points you get. So you have to both kind of vote fast and both accurate, and that affects kind of where you are. There's a timeline. It's counting down, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So you can see, okay, hey, I'm going to see now who's at the top of the leaderboard. And so you can see it goes along here. Okay, cool. Looks like 9 people got the right answer. It's William Playfair. And you can see now, if I go to next, I can see now the leaderboard with Jay on top and Z next and Steve and Roadzilla and RC. So everybody's killing it, okay? Let's go to one. I got 2 more and then we'll wrap it up. Next one, what's the name of the following chart type, okay? We're gonna look at that. Okay, there it is. What would you call that? Would you call it a histogram, a box plot, a bullet graph, or a bar graph? You can vote. Okay, so there you go. To have fun. How fun is that, right? Oh, okay, I'm going to make a vote. There we go. I'll put my vote in there. Again, the faster you vote, the more points you get. So it's kind of like people are like, you know, paying close attention. They're kind of getting all competitive and having fun with it. You can do it as teams, by the way, too, like tables and such. And so we're just doing this as individuals right now, which is fine. One more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Maybe have a little chat at the end if anybody wants to put in their comments, questions. So let's go on to the third and final question to see who's going to win it all. All right, true or false, this bar chart shows that tax rates are about to increase by more than 5 times. True or false, this bar chart shows that tax rates are about to increase by more than 5 times. Don't be alarmed, that's not what it's happening, but that's the last thing we would need right now, right? So I'll put my vote in there. Okay, I put my vote in there. There we go, everybody's answering. Okay, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it's done. To me, this is just a way to gamify it. You know, people love this stuff. You say, oh, it's kind of hokey. Maybe, but it's also sort of fun. People get into it. And you can see now who's at the podium. Okay, so who wins? And that's Z. So way to go. I think that's Zach. I'm guessing Zach is up there as the 3rd place bronze. Steve came in number 2. I don't know if that's Steve Fenn or Steve Wexler. And then at the very top of the podium is the letter J with 3,205 points. Way to go, Jay. Runners up RC and Dark Horse. So again, you know, we're just having fun with this, right? I mean, to me, this is a fun way to just turn learning about data into something it's just fun. So that's all I got. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was a breakout room, but since you can't really do that in a webinar, I'm not really going to do that here. But suffice it to say, you know, in a meeting, you can actually put people into breakout rooms, and then they can kind of chat with each other. What's really cool about that is the person running it is I can pop into any one of those rooms at any time, chat with every one of them, you know. So those are a handful of ways to make learning data more fun and you know, to me, just make it more interesting. Thoughts, questions, comments? Would love to hear your take, and or if anyone on the webinar has ideas of other ways to make learning data much more interactive. I'm all ears. I'm still learning myself, and hopefully was able to review a couple of little tools that, you know, you might find. We talked about obviously Zoom. We talked about Google Forms and Google Sheets. We talked about Sli.do. We talked about Kahoot. All ways to make. We talked about the annotation feature within Zoom. Okay, we just spoke about breakout rooms, but didn't actually do them. But yeah, those are all ways to think about adding interactivity. See you, Steve. Thanks for participating. Thanks for joining, and congrats on winning the silver medal in the amazing Data Olympics. Well, thank you all. Thank you to Andrew. Appreciate the fact that you jumped in here. Hey, I wish you all the best. Let's hang in there together this week. Let's really pull together, be good to each other, see what you can do to help each other out. FaceTime your parents and grandparents. Stay away from each other, you know, physically, but not emotionally. And let's get through it. We'll be good. Use these tools to make people smile again. Hey, it's all good. And yeah, learn a little bit about data. Why not? I think it's a really important aspect of what we're seeing happen here, not just business and such. That's always been an important part of it. But hey, with public health, that's a critical area where data matters more than anything. So how great is that for us to be able to get out there and teach people some important concepts and tools and techniques to be able to speak this language of data. Thank you all, and loving the messages coming through here, and appreciate all you joining me, and I wish you the best. Okay, look for more. I'm going to keep doing more of these free webinars to keep people engaged, keep people coming together, and look for another one coming up in another few days. Okay, bye everyone. Take care.
Great job, Ben.